Good morning, everyone in Canada, and good evening to everyone in India. I am Ananya Joshi, the president of Analytics Club for Chitkara. So today we are here for our speaker series session with Mr. Christopher, who is a director of data engineering at Royal Bank of Canada. So today he'll be sharing his journey and guiding us through the field of data and analytics. So we'll have a more perfect insight and a professional point of view on what to do and what not to do in the industry. And he'll also share his experience in the industry.
Yeah, so thank you, everyone. I'm happy to be here. Just wanted to give a quick overview of what I can kind of talk about today. Maybe a little bit of background about who I am and kind of my work experience to so far. I can give you guys some background on RBC's kind of approach to digital analytics and the practice, and talk through a few of the areas of expertise around data in general. And then I've just compiled a list of some of the resources that I read and that we use. And we'll have some time for questions. Um, so just for some background, I graduated with a Bachelor of Science from the University of Toronto. I actually did not go and do my undergrad in anything related to data analytics or computer science. I actually did an undergrad in biology, and I was planning on getting into pharmaceutical and biotechnology, that type of work. But I ended up taking an internship in 2014 at RBC, the Royal Bank of Canada, where they got me into web development, and I took an interest in that in object-oriented programming, and I kind of really fell in love with it, and decided to kind of stick with the development side of things for a while. And then with that, I stayed with the team there for about three years, making web forms applications to support the advice center and things like that. I kind of made a choice that I was going to kind of stay and pursue a little bit longer in this world, and I took a job in 2017 on the digital analytics team. That was really my first formalized job in data and analytics. I took a job building applications and automated testing suites for the digital analytics team at RBC, where I then took a full-time position managing the data collection as part of the data lifecycle. So that's where I was really introduced to tools like Google Analytics and big data and how a lot of it kind of works at an enterprise scale. So from there, after doing a lot of the requirements and data collection, I kind of grew my responsibilities and kind of expanded beyond just the collection side and kind of started to understand the full data life cycle. So with that comes, collecting of data, ingestion of data, building of tables to support analysts, and visualization and activation of data. So we in 2022, I took on the role of director of data engineering, kind of overseeing that end-to-end process for the largest behavioral data set at RBC. So, we deal with huge volumes of data. I think we collect over 10 billion hits per month. So using that volume of data is nice to collect it, but then part of the other challenge is how do we actually make use of it and digest it in ways that people can report and analyze on this data set. So that's a lot of my challenges. And then also, how do we drive value from this data? Because it's nice to be able to have it and to be able to analyze it, but at the end of the day, it's all about we're collecting this for a reason. We need to drive some sort of business value out of the data sets here, right? So that's a lot of my work right now is leading a team of product managers, data developers, data engineers, kind of multifaceted full stack developers on how do we drive this business value out of the data and how do we make use of enterprise big data scaled information. So when we talk about RBC's digital analytics practice, that's what I kind of mentioned. So for RBC specifically, and for those who aren't familiar, RBC is Canada's largest bank. One of the primary data collection tools is actually Google Analytics. A behavioral analytics tool is such as Google Analytics, Adobe Analytics, Amplitude, Snowplow, anything along those lines. They really serve as the baseline understanding for behavioral analytics. Um, so that's the main driver. RBC, we use Google Analytics. We're heavy users of it in order to understand what users are doing and bring that data in. So a team of skilled data developers manages the requirements collection and testing of digital and physical system data. Um, Once we have that data collected, so that could be users browsing the websites, browsing the mobile apps, applying for products and services, whatever it may be. Then we ingest it. We ingest the raw data into our data warehouse systems where we can then build breakout tables and subtables on that data. So for example, we have, as I mentioned, we have over 10 billion distinct events per month. We might want to segment that and break it down into, okay, here's the mobile only users, here's the web users, here's the users who entered a purchase funnel, and kind of create some breakout tables and subtables from that data. So there's a lot of data prep that needs to happen in order to make those 10 billion events per month usable when it comes to BI, when it comes to reporting, when it comes to data activation. So that's a lot of work needs to happen there, because those serve for the advanced behavioral analytics. So part of that is a lot of the questions we want to answer is like, how can we be proactive about client and prospect signal identifications, and how can we create tools and systems that create and generate lift and value, whether that's through programmatic marketing or whether that's through personalization, offer generation, things like that. So that's kind of at a high level how we kind of approach the data digital analytics practice. We do have connectors, we do use other systems, but this is kind of how the data flows when it comes from just collection to visualization. We kind of try to create that feedback loop there. When we talk about the types of roles, that's kind of what I was talking about. I'll kind of glance over this at a higher level, but as I mentioned, when you talk about an enterprise scale analytics, there's a variety of different types of data related roles. Um, you have your data developers who are the ones who manage the collection of data. Those are primarily front end web or mobile skilled individuals who are actually placing analytics tags and helping bring that data in that gets collected and brought into the backend reports. You have product managers and data analysts who set the schemas, who's help coordinate the project timelines, who are the ones that are kind of creating the governance around the data so that we know that it's the most important thing is to with data analytics is to measure twice and cut once. You want to make sure that your data is clean from the start so that you're not spending a lot of time on cleaning downstream and prep downstream. So these types of roles are critical for making sure that we get the right information right from the start. And that again is tied in with the QA and QE roles that we have. Then we have data engineers who are the ones that are cleaning, prepping, and building breakout tables and making those subtables that I mentioned based on the master data sets um, in order to help streamline the workloads for the actual consumers of the data. So up to this point, we haven't talked about anyone consuming the data. This is just the process of getting the data in. Now, once those are created, then you have insight analysts, data scientists who kind of work using those tables um, to make it easy to report, visualize, digest, kind of showcase the analytics and show, okay, what is the data trying to tell us, and trying to find those stories that the data is trying to explain to us. Data scientists could be building things like rules-based or algorithmic models that then someone like a full stack developer can take those models and make use of them in our public site, in our mobile channels to actually drive revenue or cost savings or improve the client experience otherwise by using the information that was just collected. So I've kind of laid it out here a little bit. When we talk about the areas of expertise in terms of data analysis, like I kind of mentioned, um, like I said, we start at data collection. Data developers and analysts work to collect data from digital properties. We use Google Analytics. That could be Adobe Analytics. That could be Amplitude. That could be Snowplow. There's a whole host of behavioral and product analytic tools. Those are I'm every company has some form of behavioral analytics. And these usually have a UI component where you can also report and build things directly from the UI without using SQL, without building tables, things like that. It's more like to serve marketers and other use cases if you need to make sure that your data is looking good. Google Tag Manager, tag management is a very important skill when it comes to data collection and data analysis, because this is where you're really deploying your information. You're saying, okay, when a user clicks this button, I'm going to fire this tag that's going to tell me who it was and what product they're applying for example. When you get to the next step, the ingestion and transformation, that's where you get into things like distributed file systems, Hadoop, Spark, data warehousing like Redshift, and these when it comes to data visualization, you can visualize things right from Google Analytics. You can visualize things using tools like Looker Studio. But if you want to make sure that you're using something that has like book of record, exact numbers that were collected, fast, scalable, something that you can build and show to bring back to the business, that's where you really want to be able to work with the data sort of on some form of data warehouse such as Redshift. We use, we have users of Redshift, Hadoop, data lake, and like that's our internal data lake and things like that. Once you have your data in the right locations, then that's when you can actually get into analytics and modeling. So when you talk about visualization, there's a whole host of BI tools out there. There's Amazon QuickSight, there's Looker Studio, there's Tableau. There's a whole bunch of tools that are at your disposal based on your skill set that kind of help you. And also based on your needs. Like Tableau has a little bit more of that computational capabilities built into it that kind of help you create and manage your data sets and create more advanced reports, versus something such as Looker Studio that's more direct plug and play, a little bit more simple, but a little bit less powerful. There's also tools that at this point is where you would do some modeling in something such as SageMaker using these breakout tables. So you can, it is really connected to the previous step. So you might have a table focused on only sales channels, right? Only sales that have happened. So then you can start to analyze, okay, what are the sessions that someone completed a sale versus abandoned a sale versus saw an advertisement and didn't click in. And then that's where you can really start to dig in and start to and look at the why. So a lot of the data analysis that goes on is answering why. Why do clients come to our site? Why do clients convert? What causes someone to abandon? So it could be maybe this step takes too long to load when you analyze it, and you start to understand, okay, well, if it takes 5 seconds, 80% of people drop out. Okay, we need to do something here, right? You're really looking to complete that data life cycle and answer those questions for the business, and really drive the value from the data. I like to think that digital analytics is a lot more than just reporting on performance of a campaign, for example. It's a lot of it's taking it a step further. That's one part, but then it's also you need to answer that why. Like, why are these things happening? How can we help it be a better process in the future? How can we save either improve the client experience, save money, or drive additional value from the digital properties we have. That's where something like a reverse ETL, quote unquote, life cycle happens where, like you might surface these insights and then it's a matter of, okay, how do we take these back? And that's where you have tools like, there's client side libraries for TensorFlow to help run modeling on the device. There's the Google Tag Manager works as an excellent way to kind of pull in and serve insights as well. So it kind of serves at both ends of the life cycle. Um, and tools like that, and then also just bringing recommendations and bringing findings to product teams to help them improve their life cycle of their products. So there's a lot of different ways of driving value from data. But that's kind of how, but that's like, I think that's the most important part, that this whole pipeline exists in order to surmise and drive value from the information that's collected, right? Analytics is not cheap for an enterprise to run at scale. But the reason it exists is because it is able to provide those advanced insights. Some of this as well, we work very closely with our programmatic marketing team. So that's Google Ads, Meta, TikTok, things like that. First party data that we collect here is very helpful for when it comes to talking about programmatic media. Because we are able to, for example, we can deploy a model that predicts the value of an application that gets submitted, and we can send those signals back to programmatic media, Google Ads. We can tell Google, hey, this type of client, this type of prospect applied, and they went for a higher value product, or they're more likely to go straight through and be approved. Find me more of these. And Google has their own algorithms baked into search, baked into ads and other tools that can then feedback loop off of your signals to find you more qualified leads and more highly valuable leads. And then that has a direct increase in the amount of conversions in the performance of a campaign, for example. So there's really many facets where analytics kind of plugs in to an enterprise. It's almost like there's no place anymore, I think, to create a product or a campaign or whatever it may be without having some form of understanding of the underlying data of that. So that's like very, 5,000 feet up view of how we kind of approach these things at RBC. Like I mentioned, it's a complex world. There's a lot of different types of skill sets within just data analytics. I think there's a lot of different tools, and there's a lot of different areas of interest and things like that that you could get into. I have also compiled some resources here as well for people to kind of, if you're interested in, Google Analytics, we're a heavy Google Analytics shop. There's a lot of resources here. There's some digital analytics blogs that I read and things like that. And one important thing I would say is that the industry is in a state of flux right now as far as digital analytics goes. It's important to be keeping up with current trends and understanding where things are headed, because we want to make sure that when we talk about digital analytics, we aren't talking about invasive tracking. We aren't talking about, cross-site tracking, things like that. Those maybe at some point in the past were a thing, but when we talk about digital analytics now, the industry is really getting away from things like third-party cookies, right to collect, things like that. You want to make sure that when you're collecting information, you have consent. That's why you see those consent banners across lots of websites. Google Chrome is deprecating third-party cookies this year, which has a big impact on measurement that was previously there for, across advertising, ad tech systems and things like that. There's new tools that are launched, like server-side tagging. We make heavy use of that server-side Google Tag Manager, and that's something that allows us to kind of maintain our signals, but also not necessarily put third-party JavaScripts on our site, for example, and it allows us to say this piece of information is only going to Google Analytics without going to other tools. So I think it's very important to be reading and consuming as much knowledge about the industry as you can, because as I meant, it's constantly changing, and even what we're doing today might be different a year from now. It's rapidly changing. Um, I think cookies and cookie-based tracking is going to be more and more targeted over the years. Um, but we have to find ways of continuing to surface insights from the information we have. So tools like synthetic data, modeled data, I think are going to be very important, where if you have 10-20% of your data available, can we extrapolate the rest and kind of create synthetic data that kind of fills the gap so that we can still report and understand the holistic data set without necessarily having the holistic data set. A lot of those types of techniques are still being talked about. Like Google is shifting to their topics API versus third-party cookies. There's that's an evolution of their flock procedures that they gave out. But there's a whole host of kind of a lot of headwinds right now that are changing the industry. So and I think it's important to be constantly aware of those and learning. So I think it's good that you guys are in school right now for this, so you can spend a lot of time learning. Um, and I just wanted to ask if there's any questions specifically. I'm happy to kind of dig in a little bit more, a little bit more focused on specific areas or of interest, or questions about what I've kind of gone over right now. So feel free to ask anything.
Hi, this is Nisarg.
Pardon me?
Hello,
Hi.
this is Nisarg. Uh, I want to ask you, like, what is the role of AI in this thing? Is there any kind of AI tool we are using in data collection or something?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think that deserves a lot to answer about industry trends and the way things are changing. We are tools like large language models, ChatGPT, Falcon, whatever, Llama, whatever it may be that you're interested in. A lot of those are they're going to be integrated in the digital analytics lifecycle. I don't think it's a matter of like if, it's a matter of when. So those types of tools can really help with, for example, understanding the metadata of a data set, helping classify your events. So you can ask the AI, if you have unstructured data, for example, Google Analytics is one source. You could have server logs. You could have, backend file systems from mainframe giving you information. There's a lot of different sources of data. That things like an LLM, they're very good at reading and classifying. So you can have something that kind of helps you integrate in your pipeline. And maybe you want to say, okay, well, here's a sample of data. Okay, summarize it in a new column over here so that it's human readable and understandable. You could have an LLM that, for example, basically runs your SQL queries for you, right? You can say, they're very good at understanding a data set. So if you say, here's my data set, here's my schema, okay, find me the number of users who had this with this. They're very good at doing that. And if you look at a lot of BI tools, for example, in QuickSight or Google Analytics UI itself, they're starting to get to the point where you can type a question in and it will answer it, and it will to the best of its ability right now. So you can say like, how many people last Saturday made a purchase over $50? And it's going to take that away. It's going to run that query and it's going to provide you the answer. So, LLMs are kind of like a revelation in the industry. They're going to change the working relationship. I think they're going to make it a lot easier and a lot better to surface insights. The way we've kind of been playing around with them is again for metadata definition. So if we have a new column of data, looking at our historical data and saying, okay, this is what we had before. how can we classify this one? Or how do we create a taxonomy or structure around this data that kind of will help everyone digest it and understand it, or even the model itself to understand it? Because, sometimes the model is going to be able to answer those more simplified queries, and you can create a service that does that and is really tuned to your analytics. And then you're there to kind of review and create that next step. Okay, the model's telling me this, the AI is giving me this. How do I relate this back to the business context and provide my recommendations? So to answer your question, like AI, I think is kind of inevitable as something that will be. I think it's a net positive overall for the industry. It's really exciting to be able to take these specifically large language models in order to help democratize the access to the data and understand what the data is telling you. You can even take it a step further and say, okay, given this data, give me a suggestion on like what this client should do next. And then you can kind of take those and you can start to really create some, propensities and recommendations, 1, 2, 3. Obviously, you need to tune the model based on your business, but it's a very, very interesting field.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. I want to ask, like in the RC, like in the RPC, where do you use AI apart from the data? I mean, in which like in like I mean, in which areas we use AI in the bank department?
So the bank has been using machine learning and AI for years, through, like you might see the Nomi tool, the Nomi forecast tool, which is kind of like a automatic budgeter that kind of will save money for you based on what it knows is your historical spend and things like that. But I don't think you can fully separate data from AI and LLM, because the data is really the underpinning for a lot of these models. But in terms of applications, there's tools such as things to summarize phone calls, right? Like a phone call comes in, summarize what they kind of talked about, having an AI kind of create that log for an advisor, or an AI that kind of we have internal chat bots as well to kind of help answer some questions that people have. I think that it's an industry that AI is it's hard to separate from data, but you can create, but we have a lot of products that are AI sort of supported. But those all are based on the underlying digital analytics that need to happen. If that makes sense. We would like,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Hi, sir.
Hello.
Sir, I want to ask a question that how does RBC ensure the security of the data like used in the analytics?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, we have a lot of rules around who can access and for what purpose, in terms of the data. So there's also, step one is making sure that the people who have access could go through an approval process to make sure, okay, I have access to only the e-commerce data set because in my role I'm supporting XYZ. So there's that sort of data access management that needs to happen in terms of administrating who can access and why, and making sure that you don't have, for example, you could have access to one data set that's okay. But if you have access to two of them, if you combine the data, maybe you're able to answer questions that you shouldn't be able to answer, right? So when it comes to database administration, there's a lot of thought that goes into that and making sure that there's no combination of access that you don't need. for example, one of the things that we don't like to do is have people have access to file sharing services and the data lake, because so that you're not able to, for example, use Google Docs, Google Drive, to kind of share things if you have some access. When it comes to like actually technical security on the data, everything, like, it starts from the collection. I think that a lot of people like to think they need things such as clients, first name, last name, identifiers, things like that. In reality, when it comes to doing analysis, you don't need that information directly. Like, maybe some people downstream might need that for specific types of reporting, but when we collect data, we usually only collect hashed versions of identifiers. For example, when you think about securing data, it's always thinking about the minimum amount that you need. So, like, we might have my RBC ID might be 123, but in the data set, it would just be some random characters of numbers, right? So a lot of that data loss prevention, and kind of we add checks so that when the data comes through, there's a little bit of a job that will kind of check for personally identifiable information, things like that. We don't want that, because it a lot of times doesn't. You still know I had 10 users. You don't know who those users are. You can still answer the questions and you still know the device IDs and things like that, but you don't know, you don't know address, phone number. Like, a lot of that information, you don't want to collect that a lot of the times, because it can create a potential risk in your data set. As well, we have, the standard, firewalls, encryption at rest or in transit type of thing of data to our data that kind of makes it so that, if you don't have the right keys, you won't be able to see the data in the right formats and things like that. So yeah, that's kind of a high level of how we kind of approach these things. We like to just keep it, like I said, if you don't have to collect it, don't collect it or hash it or whatever it may be. That kind of keeps your data safe.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
Uh, Actually, I have a question that have you ever encountered any challenges with a specific data analytics platform?
Yes. So right now, Google kind of shifted everyone to Google Analytics 4, which is the new version. We were coming from Universal Analytics or 3. We had lots of challenges in the migration because they changed the underlying data model. If you're familiar with Universal Analytics, it was pages and sessions based, and they had their set schemas. There was hundreds of fields laid out. When they went to Google Analytics 4, they were like, you tell us what you want, and we're going to collect it that way, in whatever way you specify. One of the biggest challenges that I've kind of come across is getting people who aren't whose full day job isn't data analytics, to want to, one, learn a new system, and two, learn how to use it efficiently and drive the right insights. Because we like to give access to, for example, our digital marketing team to be able to review the performance of their campaigns. But if for those types of roles, analytics is only 20%, 10% of your job. The other 80% is creating your marketing campaigns and things like that. I think one of the challenges within an enterprise is getting people to, one, want to learn a new system. I think change is hard. And two, Google didn't make it easy. They created this system. I think they launched it sort of half-baked, and we were kind of moving over. A lot of the functionalities weren't there. Things were thresholding. The numbers weren't right when it came to looking at the UI for these sorts of things. And a lot of the functionalities that were easy to do in the old system became, if it was 2 steps in the old system, it'd be 10 steps in the new system. So, over time they've been making it better. But it's something that we acknowledged, and that's why we kind of pivoted for a lot of our visualization. We run that off of QuickSight, for example, and we find that it works a lot very, very nicely in that circumstance. But as I mentioned, when it comes to getting everyone to kind of buy in and understand the data as well, I think that's a challenge that every enterprise faces. Like it's hard to, for people who, if your job is insight analyst, you will learn it, you will understand it, and you will present your findings. For a marketing manager, you're going to go in and try to create your report when you need to, and if you get stuck, you're gonna say this platform doesn't work, and you guys need to fix it. So I think that's one of that's like an enterprise type of challenge as well as a platform challenge. Any other questions?
So I guess I'll conclude with the questions. So my question for you is, what are some trends that you think anyone in the field of data and analytics should be aware of, being a professional or being a student who will become a professional soon?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, you should definitely be keeping up with some of the trends that Google is kind of putting out there. They write a lot of blog posts on this stuff too, in terms of how they see digital analytics, how they like the idea of a cookieless future that people have been talking about for the last few years. How do we maintain the integrity of our data when cookies are either severely hampered, or when consent is not there? How do we kind of manage our behavioral analytics in that sort of world? Thinking about the role that large language models are going to play in digital analytics, being aware of that, thinking about how they can help you in your workflow, as well as so I think technically those are probably the two biggest changes that are happening, is that users are very aware of data privacy and security. That's something that the industry probably should have done a better job at 10 years back, but here we are now, where any sort of collection is tend to be thought of as malicious, which isn't necessarily the case, right? A lot of times you want to collect because you want to make the user experience better, or because you want to promote the best product for the right client, right? You don't want to recommend something that someone doesn't actually need. Those sorts of things, right? And so that created a bit of a divide, right? And so it's very important to be keeping up. I would say follow industry experts. Like, I've linked Simo Ahava's blog here. Simo and I have had a great relationship over the last few years, and he's taught me a lot about digital analytics, and I've learned a lot just from reading his blog. We met a couple times as well, and then like I feel like I learned something from him every time. There's other industry experts, Krista Seiden. I would recommend the Super Week conference that I've linked here. Some of the speakers there, they're really they live and breathe digital analytics. So I think one of the biggest things you can do is to just keep your eyes and ears open to what others are saying as well, in the industry. But yeah, then I guess just to conclude, I love this industry. Hence, hence why I'm not working for a pharmaceutical company or something doing biotechnology. I made a pivot in my own career, and I don't have I haven't looked back. I genuinely love what I do. I look forward to work, and I think that one of the things that really keeps me going is just your ability to be creative in this industry and think critically and answer questions that maybe someone hasn't thought of, or come up with a reason why that someone hasn't thought of, and something that can really be taken back to the business, presented to a product team, and where they say, wow, we never thought of it that way. Maybe we should be presenting this product to this type of client, or maybe we want to deploy this model because it's going to have a lift of X percentage, and really helping make our client experience better, and provide a positive lift in their interaction with the company. So yeah, I think it's a very rewarding industry to be in.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone.